Hello, everyone, and welcome to the PvP Live Podcast, episode number 15. I am so excited about this show today. You know, we've been asking for more news in the PvP community, and now we finally got it. Welcome, everyone. I am your host, Jason McClaw, accompanied by fellow PvP Live staff members, Aridin, Eldakar, and David. Starting with you, Aridin, how are you doing this fine Sunday evening?
Oh man, that music, that pre-show music, I'm great. I'm ready to go.
Man,
let's do this.
Gets me pumped up. I'll tell you what, I got a nice full cup of steaming hot Earl Grey tea, and I am wired like nothing else. Eldakar, going down to you. How are you doing?
I've got to agree with Danny.
Yeah.
That pre-show music, that gets you pumped up.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
know.
being in a dance club for PvP.
Yeah, it's something else. You know, that's what you should be listening to when you're arenaing or RBGing. Davis, I'll tell you what. I wish you weren't so dark right now, but you got some kind of outfit going on, and you look like you belong in the foothills of Alaska. How are you doing today?
Need to unmute my mic. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm wearing a monkey onesie. I don't know if people can see.
Oh yeah,
It's
we certainly can see.
It's just a big monkey onesie, so I'm just chilling in that because it's comfortable.
There you go.
And yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, the music's really crazy all of a sudden. Are we a super excited podcast now?
I thought we were always a super excited podcast.
Well, that's true.
What is that?
Well,
supposed to
that
be?
just took it to the next
excited.
level. I mean,
Exactly.
we're up
Yeah,
there now.
yeah.
Yeah. You gotta
Extra
take it to
excited
level
this
11.
week because of the news.
Anyways,
Yeah, what's the song name? Darude Sandstorm? Anyone?
actually, maybe some Darude next week. Maybe that's what I should switch over to. Put some Skrillex on. All right, anyways, guys, let's jump in. We have a bunch of topics, a bunch of good topics to cover today. And the first one I want to start to talk about is the Yaspresents Arena Tournament. You know, it's really amazing to see the community putting together tournaments like these. EU Guild Yaspresents put on a tournament over the past few days with 8 teams from North America and Europe. And there was some pretty heated competition. 10K prize pool. Overall, $6K, $6,000 US for the top team. Aridin, going to you. I know you watched a bunch of the tournament. You posted on PvP Live. Wait, give us a rundown. What happened? What'd you see? What'd you like?
Well, spoiler alert for anyone that didn't get a chance to watch it yet. Team Zuni goes, ah! I guess that's how they meant to say it. Which was Chill Barton, No Lifer, and Minpoike. They took first place. They won it. And they actually had probably one of the best finals that they could have had, which was against Team Sitboy, Jamili, Peekaboo, and Starship, the top-rated Rogue Mage Druid team from the U.S. So I mean, you had the top team from each region going head-to-head in the finals, and I mean, we couldn't have asked for a better way to finish the tournament. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah. How the PvP? I got to be honest. I was kind of out most of the weekend. How did the PvP Live team do?
Unfortunately, we were eliminated pretty early on. I got a chance to talk to a few of the guys after the tournament and actually wrote a kind of short rundown of how they did on PvP Live. If I'm sure we could get a link here. But they were eliminated early on. I think that the team altogether just wasn't prepared to face it. It started pretty early actually in the U.S. because it was being hosted on EU. So you have kind of like a time zone difference and. But I mean, the games they played, they did well. It just didn't go our way this time. But they did a great job, and props to them for competing and showing up. It's awesome.
Davis, going down to you. I know you watched some of the matches yourself. You know, what did you think
I
overall?
did. I thought it was a really cool tournament, actually, and I really enjoyed the Skypes. Like, hearing the players' Skypes, I really like how some of the players kind of acted up a bit for the camera.
Yeah.
Or something like that. It made it really entertaining, and it made it not matter so much that obviously there are difficult things with queuing and production of it. So it made it not matter so much that wasn't like super on point, and I didn't mind waiting because the games were pretty fun.
The players were hamming it up a little bit on Skype, huh?
They were.
Yeah, putting on a little show.
It was. And Thugonomics was commentating while he played. He's commentating his own team playing while they played. It was pretty interesting.
Oh my god!
But,
Yeah, like I said, I'm sorry I didn't get to see it. I'm gonna have to watch the.
And the viewers ate it
VODs.
up too. They
Oh, I
loved
bet.
it.
yeah, they loved it.
Yeah, Thug's a decent commentator, huh? He's putting his
Yeah.
work in because he streams all the time and he's been commentating a lot.
Yeah.
It's pretty good stuff. Eldecard, going down to you. Did you get a chance to watch any of the Yaspresents Tournament?
I only got a chance to see a couple of games, but they looked pretty good from the few games that I got to see yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really excited just to see community-run tournaments in general, because as I'm sure people saw during some of the logistic issues during that tournament, it is enormously challenging to put together any kind of large-scale tournament for World of Warcraft. There's unfortunately just not that many tools available to make it an easy thing.
Right.
So anybody that's stepping up to the plate and putting in the work and time to make this kind of thing happen, all the support in the world from me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's just wonderful, and I'd love to see more community-run tournaments in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I can attest to that too. When we were running the Friday night face-offs by ourselves, it was there's a lot of work that goes behind that, and I don't think a lot of people realize how stressful that can be. Running one of those tournaments. But it's like everyone said, it's an amazing to see the community coming together, and it's great that Yaspresents at EU Guild putting this on once a year, right? They did it last year too, right? Or the year before too?
Yeah.
Or just the last year? I think just the year before.
Yeah, I don't think they've maintained any type of schedule with it, and I know going forward they plan to do it a lot more. So props to those guys for putting in the hard work and bringing some good entertaining matches to the community. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
And what do people think about Trilla winning the WMD? Was it? Yeah, WMD versus the RMD.
I
say.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of
stronger.
people actually had predicted those two teams in the finals, and that was the match that everybody really wanted to see. I'm not going to get too into saying EU versus US, but you got to understand a lot of the US players were playing with pretty high latency, and which is hard, especially as a healer.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is an argument, but they were good matches.
Yeah.
They were good matches nonetheless, and I think the WMD of Chilla, Minpoike, and No Lifer did a fantastic job. And they proved why they should win. So their teamwork was outstanding. I mean, as good as you can play that comp, I think they did. So
Right. Anyways, moving on. Oh, go ahead, Davis.
It's all right.
Okay, we'll just pass you right by. It's all right. You're in a monkey suit right now, anyways.
All right.
Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, we asked and we received. Holinka, I believe Monday or the day after the podcast or last week's podcast, tweeted out to someone, we're planning an additional PvP season for Mist. Details on end of season rewards, timeline, and new gear to come soon. Now, this is huge news for multiple reasons. First, it kind of throws up some flags as to how far away we are from Warlords of Draenor. I mean, that's, I would say, probably one of the biggest ones, because you got to think about, a PvP season roughly is about 24 weeks or 6 months. So that's going to put us at what? I'm not even. What month's that going to put us at?
That puts us into about July or August.
Yeah, July or August.
Depending on when this current season ends. So
right. So it looks like, I mean, if we had to guess right now, it's looking like Warlords of Draenor is possibly coming out for a September release. Maybe. I mean, still obviously complete speculation. Danny, going to you, Aridin. What do you think about this? I mean, what does this mean for the PvP community?
The reaction seems to be kind of mixed. Obviously, a lot of people are saying, well, this, it pushes Warlords of Draenor back even further. But if you think about it, no real release date's ever been mentioned. I think the only thing we have as a potential release was from BlizzCon, where they said they're aiming for summer, which when Blizzard says they're aiming for a date, take that with a grain of salt. Because they do the best job they can to make sure it's absolutely perfect on release. So everybody's expecting summer, and I think it put the community into such a frenzy, right? Like, summer, we're getting a summer release, and then they talk about this new season and say, oh, well, now we're not getting a summer release. But as far as I know, August is still summer. So if it comes out even in late August, I mean, you're still pretty close to summertime, right?
Right.
I think it's a great thing, honestly, because the last two expansions with Wrath Season 8 and Cataclysm Season 11, I mean, both of those seasons went on for nearly 40 weeks, 38 weeks, or 39 weeks. So, and it tends to get kind of boring when you're going on for that long. So even if they were to do shorter seasons, like 2 20-week seasons, it's better to break it up than to have one crazily long season. So I think it's a good thing.
Before we move on to Eldercar 2, I want to mention, please go to pvp-live.com, because if someone could link that post actually right now that we have on our website, we have some great comments for some top players in the PvP community, reactions to the new Season 15 starting. Eldercar, going down to you, what does Season 15 mean to you?
Well, I think it's a great thing, which is what I immediately responded to when Helenka mentioned it on Twitter. Like Danny mentioned, we've had extremely long end of expansion seasons in the past, and people have been asking for another PvP season during those expansion patches, or end of expansion patches, and they're finally getting one. I know a lot of people are responding negatively because they're seeing this as an indication that we might have a long way to go until we see Warlords of Draenor, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. I mean, it's certainly an indication that we're not going to get the expansion in the next 3 months, but I think we already kind of knew that. So we could have a relatively short season. It could be like 16 weeks. It doesn't necessarily have to be 20 or 24 weeks. So really, I don't think this changes anything in terms of what I was expecting for the release date of the expansion. We're not even in beta yet.
Right.
And the betas typically last like 3 to 4 months. So I think we're still right on track, and this is nothing but good news. And honestly, I feel kind of bad for Helenka because everybody was lighting him up about delaying the expansion and all this other nonsense, but this has nothing to do with the expansion's development cycle. This is just making the current game better while we're waiting.
Yeah.
So don't shoot the messenger, guys.
Well, not only that, but I think it's kind of like, as you said, it's something people have been asking for. Make, instead of having one extremely long season, break it up. I don't think it has anything to do with the work on Warlords being pushed back. I think it's going along at a right pace. They just made the decision to break it up and give us more to do. Which
Absolutely. And it shouldn't have come as a surprise to anyone because we've seen the season items in the game files since patch 5.4 came out. We always knew that this was a possibility and something that they were planning for, depending on how the development cycle was panning out. And people might be disappointed to see it actually coming to fruition, but I think it's definitely a good thing. Even if they were ready to start beta today, I'd still like to see another season in the interim, given how long the betas typically last.
Eldercar, your best educated guess. When do you think we will see the WOD beta?
The WOD beta?
Yeah.
I would say we'll probably see the alpha, if there is going to be an alpha, start sometime next month in February. We'll probably see a closed beta start in March. That'd be my guess.
Seems pretty accurate, right? Yeah. Davis, going down to you. Season 15. What does this mean for you and your PvP guild?
Me and my PvP guild. It doesn't mean an awful lot for the whole of the PvP guild, but it means an awful lot for those of us that are still playing the game. But basically, I don't know. I think it's fine. We always want another season, and it gives us a chance to maybe reset some MMR. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe we'll see some nice changes that are tested before Warlords of Draenor. Like CC changes or something like that, if we were lucky, or maybe just a bit more. The damage is a bit better scaled. I don't know.
Well, that was actually feedback that a lot of players and people I had talked to had given about it. They said that if it's just another season, the same as this one with a different number, it's not really worth it. That it would be good to actually go through and kind of do a sweep on the numbers and balance and actually try to fix what's wrong with the current game for the next season. That it wouldn't really be worth it without that. So I tend to agree with that.
Absolutely, Danny. I agree with that as well. They could use this as an opportunity to test out changes and other things that they've wanted to test out for a while, but didn't want to interfere with the
current season.
The way the current season plays out.
There's a lot of speculation too with the beginning of a new season. There could possibly be an increase to base resilience or some balance changes as well. Danny, going to you, Airden, first. I'm going to ask you a two-part question here.
Sure.
Do you think there should be an increase to base resilience? And now this is going to be a loaded question. I hope you're ready for this. Now, what do you think that Blizzard could do to do some major balancing between classes? Do you have any thought on that?
Oh, man. Well, to answer your first question, I'm pretty sure it was already confirmed that there will be an increase in base resilience.
Okay.
Actually, Jeff got the response via Twitter from Holinka that they will be, which, and I think it should. If there's going to be new gear with higher item level, that means more damage, more healing. The base resilience is going to have to go up. Otherwise, there's just going to be too much damage going around. So it's pretty much been confirmed, and I agree with that. As far as balance goes, if you would have asked me this a few days ago, and I'm pretty sure this is something we're going to get to in the show, I would have said, the goats and foxes for hunters, the cast speed debuff, and even some damage from some classes I think is a little bit out of hand, but it seems like they're actually making a lot of balance changes as we speak. So I'm not sure where they're going to go with it and how much they plan on continuing, but they're already starting to kind of work on it.
Well, what class do you think is the most unbalanced at the moment, if you had to say?
Most unbalanced. I don't think I would pin a specific class, but I would say the combination of mage and druid is really strong.
That's what a lot of
druid
people are
mage.
talking about, yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that actually has to do with the symbiosis. Not only are druids one of the best healers in the game, they have a lot of tools, but symbiosis, being able to ice block defensively and having the Heart of the Wild, I'm sorry, it froze on for a second, able to do damage. Yeah, it's just a very strong combination. So I think that some of the synergy between the two has to maybe be toned down a bit. Jeff's laughing, what?
Sorry, somebody keeps blowing up my phone here.
Oh.
Eldikar, going down to you. I know this is a loaded question. It's a tough one. It's not something we talked about in the pre-show or anything. But what do you think for balancing issues in PvP, just PvP? What do you think is the most unbalanced class, or what do you think could be fixed possibly?
That is definitely a loaded question,
I know.
And from my perspective, I've always had the most trouble with frost mages, but it seems like frost mages are perpetually strong in PvP. I really can't think of a time that frost mages have been exceptionally weak. So if I was just going to throw something out there, I would say maybe a reduction in the amount of CC power that frost mages have, but that's likely to come along with the major changes to CC in Warlords of Draenor. Maybe they could experiment a little bit with it in this next season.
And that's something. This is a topic we're going to be talking about shortly too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but overall, I don't know. Fixing balance issues. It's so complicated that I think it's just best to be left to the professionals. I'm sure Holinka is going to come up with something good.
Davis, going to you. This should be one of the times that you're actually grateful that I go to you last, almost always. I know it's like I said, it's a tough question, but what do you think is one of the most unbalanced classes? What do you think that in season 15, if they're going to do some major or smaller changes, what could Blizzard do to kind of balance everything out and try to make some people happy? You're never going to make everyone happy.
I think it would be interesting to experiment with just tuning something about PvP power for individual classes, if it was possible to do that.
It's interesting.
So some classes would have 30% PvP power and other classes would have 20% and so on. So that individually each class's damage was just kind of scaled and tweaked for PvP only rather than for PvE, because we saw a lot of big changes regarding how much strength DKs have and all that, and all of those came in, and that wasn't really a PvP friendly change. I don't think people would say.
Yeah, that makes sense. Before we go on,
that's actually really interesting because for as long as I can remember, people have been calling for PvP specific abilities, right? That they do one thing in PvP and another in PvE. And the developers have always said, we want to try to avoid that as much as possible to, avoid confusion. But I've never actually thought about that concept of tuning PvP power per class. That's actually really interesting.
Yeah, I don't. We've never discussed that actually.
Yeah,
Maybe that could be
I just think
topic for next week.
Like it would be, I don't know how hard it would be to do, but it sounds a lot easier to do than to try and pick out each class's individual ability that's too overpowered or whatever. You know what I mean?
So, I think the danger to do something like that, it would have to be hidden. It would not have to be on your character sheet because, or really like that. What's the word for it? Like
transparent.
Yeah, it can't be too transparent because if people will just get upset that, oh well, my class only has 30% PvP power and this one has 45. What gives? But
I think the big danger with something like that is you're attaching too much of a class's ability to compete in PvP to gear, and disproportionately so for whichever classes are going to be benefiting the most from PvP power. And you'd put those classes at a greater disadvantage if they were wearing any other kind of gear, like PvE gear. Maybe somebody of that class has PvE gear, they're looking to get started in PvP. They'd be at an enormous disadvantage if the developers were using that as the tool to fix class balance issues in PvP rather than going to the root and fixing the actual underlying problem. So I think it's an interesting idea, but I think it might do more harm than good.
I would foresee a bunch of people complaining about that. But actually, guys, that would actually be a great blog post for sometime next week if you guys want. I mean, that could be a really loaded one, but it could be an interesting one as well.
I mean, it's just a little bit of a different perspective on how it could be handled. But overall, I would say there's definitely some underperforming classes for sure. Shadow Priests come to mind. But overall, I think now that everybody pretty much has full gear and we're well into the season, I think balance is actually not that bad. I really can't complain about anything. Mm-hmm. Just class synergy is probably one of the biggest areas of overpoweredness there are. But individually, every class is pretty. I mean,
hunters are one-shotting people.
Well,
remembering this, right? That's a thing that you are aware.
This is just actually really recent though, with the recent buff to Ironhawk that I believe we're getting to soon.
Yep.
So,
it'll be interesting. Before we actually move on to some of the latest hotfixes, I just want to remind everyone, please go to pvp-live.com, bookmark the site, and I also want to give a shout out to Aridit and JXL. You guys did awesome jobs this week. We have tons of content on there, awesome blog posts. Please go. I mean, just look forward to it too. It's going to be a bunch of different updates in the coming weeks. Moving on to the next subject, and if someone could maybe link it to everyone in chat, the latest hotfixes. I want to kind of go through a couple of these, not maybe one by one, but they're kind of bigger ones. As we all know, Shadow Priests have amazing burst potential, but they're also one of the first ones to be targeted, right? They're one of the first ones to be trains and comps. So one of the latest hotfixes is Shadow Priests now have increased armor at 100%, up from 60%. Davis, starting with you, what do you think this means for Shadow Priests? Is that going to help them at all? I mean, that's not that big of an increase. That's not that big of a buff. What's that mean?
I mean, it's not. I mean, it helps them a little bit, I guess, but I'm not seeing Shadow Priests doing tremendously better than they were before, because the majority of classes that are affected by armor all have some sort of debuff that reduces your armor by at least 50%. I'm not sure if that, or they just have spell damage in amongst their damage. So armor's a pretty useless stat the majority of the time.
Well, let me ask you this. What do you think that they could do for Shadow Priests? What kind of defenses do you think they could give them to make them more viable, last longer?
I don't know. I don't know enough about Shadow Priest to.
I would actually disagree with you that armor buff may not be enough. I think it's definitely something they're trying out, tweaking. But one of Shadow Priest's biggest concerns in PvP, in arena, whatever, is getting trained by melee, and most do physical damage, which is affected by armor. So, I mean, who knows? It could be enough to make them potentially better than they are now. I still think they're not a bad class. It's just that, yeah, they're just too easily shut down, getting trained by melee all day.
Eldakar, going to you. I mean, what do you think about Shadow Priests in general in the state that they are in right now with 100% armor increase?
I haven't had a chance to play with them since the hotfix, but I'm really glad to see them making balance changes that are buffing the underpowered and underrepresented classes rather than necessarily taking a heavy-handed nerf towards the more powerful classes. I know I was saying just a minute ago that Frost Mages always seem like they're really strong, but I've always said that you buff the weaker classes more than nerfing the strong classes. Make everybody feel overpowered, if that's even possible. But but buffing the weaker classes definitely seems like it feels better, and I don't see how anybody can really complain about it. I mean, obviously, people are going to find reasons to complain about pretty much anything, but I think it's pretty much the best that you can do. I'd like to see more frequent hotfixes like this to hopefully bring the balance even to a better state than it already is. Like Danny was saying, I think the current balance it's better than it's been in a long time.
Absolutely.
But I think that they can definitely continue to improve it, and I think they're going to continue to try.
Kind of tunneling these together, going on to the next hotfix, Moonkin form. Moonkin form now increases the Druid's armor by 100%, also up from 60%. And I'm going to kind of bundle these together. And Astral Communion is now immune to interrupts. Marty, Laser Chicken, one of our staff members at PvP Live, wrote an excellent little post on the PvP Live site. If someone could link that in the chat.
Just linked already.
Oh, sorry, never mind. I know none of us are really Moonkin players here, but starting down with Eldakar this time, what do you think this means? Were Moonkins really seeing a problem being interrupted in Astral Communion?
That I don't know. I have never played a druid, and I don't play with any druids, so I really can't add much there. But
well, what about the increase in druid's armor to 100%? Any thoughts on that?
That was, I think that was definitely needed. They did seem really squishy, and I know pretty much every time I jumped into arena and I saw a Moonkin, I was tunneling them down.
Well, this is actually basically a reversal of a change they made with, I think it was 5.4, the beginning of this current season. They wanted to go through and nerf a lot of the passive damage reduction that classes had, and Moonkins used to have this 100% armor, and then they brought it down, and now they brought it back up, maybe realizing that it wasn't the best decision, which, if that's the case, then they obviously saw the numbers they needed to see and made an adjustment based on it. But yeah, I don't know. I know you didn't really go to me here, but I'm going to jump in anyway since I'm still talking.
Go ahead.
But
how dare you, Danny?
I don't think it's really much to complain about. It's not a change that's like, oh my god, now druids or Moonkins are going to be completely overpowered. It's more of a maybe trying to give them an easier time. And that's about it, really.
Davis, going down to you. I mean, do you play with Moonkins in any comps? I know you don't play one yourself, right?
I don't play Moonkin. I don't play with any Moonkins at the moment. I mean, I don't know if it's good or not, but Hotted is in the chat,
yes,
he will be able to tell us whether it's good or bad.
Hopefully he can weigh in there for us.
I don't think that the Astral Communion helps.
The change for it, okay.
The change for that doesn't help.
Actually, let's move on. I guess let's talk about Hunter Goat Pets, right? I mean, the trample ability was able to apply 25% cast debuff to players. I mean, this is a huge deal. This is a huge complaint. This is what everyone's talking about right now. Aaron, going to you. I know you've been kind of vocal about this. Let's start with you. I mean, what do you think about this?
So to start, it wasn't just the Hunter Goat that got the nerf. It was pretty much every single cast slow debuff in the game is nerfed to a 10% slow now. And overall, I think the intention is good, honestly. But the difference is, and that a lot of players are kind of being vocal about now, is that this Hunter Pet ability is much different than other abilities. Say, for example, Warlock's Curse of Tongues, Curse of Enfeeblement, I think it's called now.
Yep.
It's that's something you actively have to apply to the team, and it takes skill, I guess you could say, and you have to think about it to do it. To whereas the goat pet just did it. You set it on autocast and it debuffed the whole team, right? And also the same thing with Rogue's
Mind-numbing poison.
mind numbing. Sorry, mind numbing. It's on their weapon. It's passively applied. So the concern here with a lot of people is that it's a good idea probably to nerf these passive debuffs, but a lot of, for example, warlocks are really concerned with the tongues debuff because it is something that requires you to apply it, individually and think about it. So I would tend to side with that because not just because I do play a warlock, but you're taking away a player's skill. You're reducing the impact of their work, and I mean that's really the argument I could make. But overall, I think the change is really bringing a lot of strength to caster classes and healers. Mages in particular have been one of the target classes, saying that it's really making them stronger. And John Milley, actually, I talked to him earlier after the podcast, which I'll be releasing a kind of a guest blog with him later in the week. But in it, he said that this debuff is like a 15% passive buff to mage's damage. So, it's definitely see how it plays out.
Eldikar, going down to you, like we were saying, there's been a ton of different casting speed debuffs or hotfixes, starting with the Hunter Go-Ped Trample. What do you think about all of these different hotfixes were just released earlier in the week?
I think the hotfixes overall were good. I've never really liked particularly the cast time slows that are automatically applied, like Danny was mentioning. Mm-hmm. I do think that Curse of Tongue should have been treated differently since you do have to actively cast it. Maybe it didn't need to be left at its existing value, but maybe just lowered a little bit less, maybe to like 15%, 20%, something like that. Mm-hmm. But it definitely should have been treated differently. Going forward, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if in Warlords of Draenor they removed all passive cast time slows. I know they're looking at reducing crowd control in general, and I don't know necessarily if they categorize cast time slows as a crowd control effect, but it certainly has that type of effect, mm-hmm. in my opinion at least. It doesn't completely lock you down, but it definitely slows you down. And I'd like to see all the passive cast time slows removed and have the classes, rebalanced. Obviously, anything that gets removed or added to a class is going to be part of an overall rebalancing. So I'm not saying that classes that currently have it should just lose it and not be compensated. But I don't feel like passive cast time slows that you don't have to think about or you don't have to manually apply yourself really add anything to the game. It's just a minor annoyance and it just complicates class balance needlessly.
Yeah.
Davis, going to you, the Hunter Go-Ped Trample, and I know you play a rogue all the time. What do you think about this mind-numbing poison debuff? Does this matter to you?
Yeah, it does. I've got a problem with it.
Okay, let's get into it.
He's got a bone to pick.
Let's get into it.
Yeah. So basically, mind-numbing used to be like a really niche thing that only a few rogues out of all the people that would play rogues would use. And if they used it properly, then yeah, it was kind of OP, but it was kind of hard to use the effect that it's got to now. The problem was they made everyone able to get that and crippling poison. And then from there on, so now they're just like passive things that we apply to targets. And that ruined it. But I can understand why they needed to change it, but mind numbing is now pretty much useless now. I would rather use crippling or paralytic poison.
Now, what about the other, cast speed debuffs? Do you have any thoughts on the Hunter? The Hunter pass?
Well, the Hunter one needed to happen.
Right.
Like, absolutely needed to happen. The Rogue one kind of needed to happen. And then the Warlock one probably didn't need to happen. That's just what I think.
Airden, going to you, actually, I don't think you really went in depth. I know you play a Warlock all the time. What do you think about the cast of Enfeeblement? Or the curse of enfeelment. Curse of enfeelment, I'm sorry. God,
well,
we're all jumbling words tonight.
I did comment on it a little bit, but I just think as something that requires thought and skill to apply should be kind of left alone. Maybe the 25% or 30%, whatever was not needed. It could have, but kind of what Jeff said. And going back, this is something I've talked about quite a few times actually on this podcast. Is anything in the game that basically plays for you is not something that should be in the game. And I've used the example of Psyfiend before, and other abilities of the like Stampede when it was really, really strong. It's just it doesn't require skill to use those things. Well, sometimes you can if you talk about Psyfiend eating traps or something, but
right.
But yeah, that's about it. It's something that's actively applied. Warlock has to think about it and press the button on the correct target, make sure it stays up. It shouldn't have been affected the same way as the goat pet. And that's my opinion.
Seems reasonable. Earlier this week, Lore gave us some more information on CC changes. It was suggested that CC be removed from talent trees altogether and instead be spec-specific. Eldakar, starting with you, what do you think about this? I mean, what do you think about the CC changes?
Well, I think the CC changes that they're planning, based on what I've read, the overall reduction in CC and the reduction in people's ability to get out of that CC, I think that's overall a great thing for the game. I've been saying for years that there's too much CC in World of Warcraft, and it really hampers my personal enjoyment of the game. Because if you're able to lock somebody down for 90% of a match, how much is their skill as a player really affecting the outcome of that match? Their skill to avoiding the CC, their skill to landing it, and I'm not saying that CC should be removed completely by any stretch of the imagination, but the reduction is definitely needed. People need to be able to control their characters more and play the game more, rather than just sitting in huge chains of CC for long periods of time. And it needs to be simplified so that it's easier for particularly newcomers to understand. And I mean, even people that are veteran players of the game that have been playing in the PvE side of things for quite a long time may not really understand all the different DR categories and which CCs synergize with each other, which don't, why you would not want to use a short duration stun if you've got like a rogue on the team that might do a long duration stun. It's all really, really complicated, and they need to do a better job of presenting that to players. And I'm glad to hear that they're working on it.
Well, Eldakar, let me ask you this. Obviously, a ton of people, it's a major problem. Lost control of your characters. It's super annoying. It's time consuming. What would you suggest to kind of fix CC in the state it's in? Do you have any minor suggestions, or just reductions of, or maybe longer cooldowns, or what?
I think consolidating some of the DR categories, like I think they're already planning to do, would definitely be a big help. When there's so many different DR categories, you can set up enormously long chains of CC, and chaining CC should be possible, but it shouldn't be as easy to do as it is now. And instant CCs are a huge part of that. I'd really like to see a reduction in instant CCs. Anything that doesn't really require you to position yourself or plan it out, or to have the enemy put themselves out of position for you to land it. If you can just hit one button and boom, they're stunned for 5 seconds, like HOJ.
Right.
It's too much, and it just gives the opportunity to set up the longer cast time CCs. So it makes it almost impossible to avoid long CC chains in some instances, and that's what I think needs to be avoided. If you're getting caught in a long CC chain, it should be because the other team is doing something really right, or you're doing something really wrong.
Eldakar, let me ask you this. What, in your opinion, what is the most annoying crowd control ability that any class has right now? I know, it's a tough one, huh?
Fear.
Well, fear, definitely. Sure. I agree with Danny. And not so much the cast time fears, but the instant cast AoE fears, like Howl of Terror. They frustrate me to no get out. Not just because they're shutting you down for that period, but because I like to play melee classes and they run you away. So
right.
Not only are you not attacking for that period of time, but the other player can get so much extra ground while you're running away.
Well, not only that, it also has kind of, if you get lucky, it has this effect of if you get like a really fortunate or lucky fear pathing on the enemy team, you can fear them clear across the map and actually CC them theoretically for longer than the intended duration, because the time it takes them to run back and get in range of their teammates, and the damage it takes to break the fear, it's actually the strongest CC in the game by far.
Yeah, because it's essentially a knockback with a CC.
Yeah.
Right.
And it is a crazy knockback. Like you said, Danny, it can move people out of position for like support from their teammates.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to making them, stretch out the ground that they have to recoup to get back on their target.
Right. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Eldegard. I mean, do you think longer diminishing returns would help this?
Longer diminishing returns can help, but I think maybe just reduced duration, or maybe slowing down the run speed of people while they're under the effect of fear, so they're still running around, but not running quite as far away. Or maybe just a change to the pathing logic, so you won't necessarily just beeline straight away from your team and the target.
Right.
Fear. What do they say? Feared to Africa, feared to Egypt.
Right.
I mean, it's.
Well, Airden, going to you. I mean, what do you think about crowd control changes?
I think one thing that needs mentioning is the way the game is designed is everything affects something else. So, if you reduce the amount of CC, you're also going to have to reduce the amount of healing, the amount of damage, because the way it is now, it's CC is needed the way it is now to play the game, because damage is so high, healing is so high. If you can't land a 20-second CC chain on a healer, a good healer, you're probably not going to get a kill. So if they were going to reduce the CC, it has to be pretty much a complete retuning of the game. I find that with CC specifically, there's kind of like two classes or two trains of thought on it. For the more, I guess I would say, average player, you or me or anybody else that just plays at an average level, it can feel a lot of times that you never get to play your character right because you're just CC'd constantly. But on the high end, the guys that play in the tournaments and rank 1 multiple seasons, for them the CC is needed. Otherwise, they will never land a kill. So it kind of splits the community in that way. I think it would be good to reduce the amount of the types of DR, the types of CC, because it's confusing. But yeah, I think if the amount of CC is being reduced, they have to also lower healing and damage as well.
So I'm guessing you guys are probably all happy about Druid's instant cloning going away. I'm guessing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm guessing that's probably a consensus amongst everyone. Davis, going down to you. What do you think about crowd control changes? I mean, you can get a pretty big CC from a rogue.
I mean, but none of it's like super spammable except the stuns. And there are people complaining about the stuns in chat. And I'd just like to say that we've always had stuns. This isn't a new thing. So stop complaining, because I'm not losing my stuns. Like, Rogue's thing is they stunned. That was always their thing, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, yeah, less CC would be good. I would really like to see a lot less fears. And any AoE CC. I hate AoE CC. It's just a CC that you don't even like target someone, you don't do anything, it just happens. Boom, win.
Davis, let me ask you this. I mean, kind of like I asked Eldegard too. I mean, do you think a longer diminishing return or just a shorter duration of fears or crowd control in general? I mean, what do you think would help?
Fear has so many problems. It's hard to know where exactly to target it to fix it. I mean, it could actually break on damage, or it could last less time, or it could be, I don't know, have a longer cooldown. I don't know.
It's hard. I mean, that's a tough question, obviously.
So many things they could do to it, but yeah, fear is just horrible.
Davis, the defender of rogues. Danny, going to you real quick again too. I mean, obviously, your main's a warlock, so you actually are kind of in agreement that they should do something with fear.
Yeah, well, I mean, just because of the class I play doesn't mean I'm jaded to see the effects that it has, right?
Sure.
And and I want balance just as much as the next guy. And I think arguably Fear is the strongest CC in the game, especially from a Warlock. It's spammable. It throws you way out of position. It's and if the DR's up on one target, you just switch and start spamming Fear on another target. It's a really strong, really effective CC. But kind of getting back to what JD was saying earlier is, rogues have stuns. They've always had stuns. It kind of reminded me that I think part of this problem is, every class has started to get sort of every CC, right? As the expansions have gone on and the game's evolved. I think that's what really needs to be limited. I don't think, maybe Fear doesn't need to be changed, but maybe not every class should have a Fear. You get what I'm saying? Or stuns don't need to be changed, but not every class should have a stun. Maybe that's some place that they could start, kind of.
Yeah, there's definitely too much CC in the game,
Yeah,
and I think part of that has come in with every expansion. The developers feel the need, and rightfully so, to add new spells to each class, to give every class something new to play with, something new to be excited about. But that has the effect of just slowly introducing more and more CC into the game, and I think it's finally just reached a breaking point where it's getting insane.
Like paladins now have a Fear. Like what?
Right.
What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. In addition to a blind, which was
Yeah.
added
In addition
in
to a
MOP as
blind.
well. Yeah.
And a stun. They're like rogues, rogues and warlocks all together.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next topic. We kind of touched base on this earlier today and a couple other previous podcasts as well, but I just want to touch briefly again on it today. Holinka tweeted out, "We dislike how large base resilience numbers have gotten to. Our goal is to reduce or eliminate both in Warlords of Draenor." Now, this is kind of a big deal. I mean, overall, in the metagame, how do you think that removing base resilience or resilience altogether is going to affect gameplay? Eldikar, going to you.
There was a write-up about this. I don't know if somebody wants to link it in chat. Exil wrote it up for PvP Live today.
Right, yeah.
And I agree with most of what he said. And Danny put a good reply on that, which I replied to as well a little bit earlier. And basically, I think that resilience is probably going to stay in the game, but hopefully they'll be able to reduce it down to lower levels. Resilience and battle fatigue right now really act as kind of band-aids to get damage and healing relative to player health where they should be. And it really doesn't add anything substantive to gameplay. It doesn't add anything interesting to the players, particularly now that resilience gems are not an interesting or viable choice. So the more that they can scale that back and remove it out of the game and rebalance things so that it's not needed, the better. And it seems like the developers feel that way as well. But what I'd like to see happen is just have resilience moved away from the itemization side of things. So it's not on any items. You can't gem it at all. It's just sitting in the general tab like battle fatigue is. And if they can reduce it down to really low levels for both battle fatigue and resilience, that would be ideal. But given how things tend to change throughout expansions patch cycles, and even if you could get damage and healing to where they should be at the start of the expansion, it's not necessarily going to be there at the end. So I think the developer should definitely leave them in the game, even if they're just at low levels, so that they have those knobs to turn to rebalance things in the future if they need to.
That's a good point. Davis, going to you, I mean, what do you think about, should they get rid of resilience in Warlords of Draenor completely?
Then how would PvP and PvE gear differ?
That's a good question, yeah.
Well, resilience isn't on PvP gear now, other than stat or set bonuses.
Yeah, it's not. But it's just like a PvP stat, if you know what I mean. Like if it was removed, then like what? I don't know. I think they need it to a certain extent. Wouldn't you say? Like there needs to be a little bit there. That they can tweak in case things do get a bit out of hand or whatever, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't see them tweaking it very much, so much as increasing it by 20% or 30% or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. Like PvP power and PvP resilience always, to me, seemed like Blizzard said they wanted to introduce it, so it was like a knob they had that they could turn, and I've not seen much knob turning. just a lot of like knob spinning, like just like massive, crank it up. But yeah, I don't know.
So, Aaron, going to you, Davis thinks that they should keep resilience in, but lower it down a little bit. What are your thoughts on, baseline resilience? Should they get rid of it?
It's really complicated, actually, because right now the current game is balanced around how much damage we, the player, can do to a PvE mob or a boss, right? That's how they tune the game. If that's the case and it stays that way, and players keep getting stronger as the tiers and item levels go up, we absolutely need resilience. Otherwise, the damage and healing is just going to be too insane and out of control. In order to get rid of resilience completely, the game has to be 100% balanced around how much damage and healing can be done to another player and not to a PvE mob. And that's it. That's the only way they could get rid of it. Otherwise, maybe the way it's implemented isn't exactly what Blizzard wants to do, and it's not very what's the word for it? It's just kind of like weird. It's kind of a weird stat, right? But the effect it has on reducing the amount of damage coming in from another player is absolutely needed for the way the game is currently balanced. It cannot go anywhere unless they change everything completely.
Changes.
Right.
Huge changes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, again, I mean, it's going to be super interesting to see, once we get into beta, or once even, maybe news starts leaking out of the alpha, to see actually what the resilience changes are, because, I mean, that's going to be a big deal. Moving on to the final topic, and it's kind of a quick one, but it's a major complaint amongst many players right now, because a lot of top end, or hell, I don't even want to say top end, a lot of PvP players in general are on the server Tichondrius. These queue times, guys, come on. I mean, I'm on Tyche myself. I mean,
well, to be fair, it's not just Tichondrius. It's also Darkspear, it's Illidan, it's Bleeding Hollow, Stormrage, and I think that's it, maybe.
So I mean, any of the major, PvP servers, and I mean, you can go up to waiting in a couple hours almost in queue, right?
Yeah, well, that's a pretty big stretch, but when I try to log on Tyche on like prime time, it's usually about 40 minutes. It's pretty long.
And it wasn't like this, I would say, back in November? It wasn't that bad. It just seems like all of a sudden it just kind of kicked into full gear. I mean, Danny, do you have any explanation for why this is going on? Just, a resurgent of old players coming back, or what?
Yeah, maybe. And I've tried to stay like so optimistic about this the entire time, because like you said, it wasn't like that previously, just a few months ago, and lately it's been like really bad queues, and I was kind of like, well, this is cool, like maybe players are coming back, maybe WoW's gaining in popularity again, right? But you're only able to maintain that optimism and good attitude so many nights out of the week, and then you just want to play, right? So
you just want to get in the game.
Yeah, right. And the sad thing is, I play on Tichondrius, I play on Darkspear, I have a character on Bleeding Hollow, like all of these full realms that you can't log on, and it's ridiculous. So yeah, but to be honest with you, it's great that they're offering this, right? And I think really the players that it's going to affect, and the players it's really targeted at, honestly, are the players that just don't want to wait in queue times and want to get off. I think the servers are still going to stay full. They're still going to see queue times. There's not going to be an up in relocation of guilds or anything like that. It's kind of giving players that are really, really sick of waiting in queues opportunities to get away. It's not really going to affect that much, I don't think, because they're popular. They're high population realms for a reason, and they have been for a very, very long time.
Right. Prefacing this too, I'm not sure if Aridin covered every single transfer, but it's Area 52, Stormrage, Tichondrius, Illidan, Bleeding Hollow, and Darkspear. Those are the ones that are going to be eligible for free character transfers, because the queue times are, getting pretty high right now. Eldakar, going down to you. Do you play on any of those servers? Do you play on Tyche? I don't think you do.
No, I don't play on Tyche.
Okay.
I play on Boulder Fist and all the various realms that it got merged with. It was actually one of the first realms to get those mergers. But I think, like Danny said, these are high population realms for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really, I don't think it's going to have a significant impact on their queue times. But going forward, they're continuing to introduce more and more functionality that is completely cross-realm. And I think the group finder is really going to be the big one. Once they have Warlords and Draenor in place, if they have a really effective group finder that allows people to find and join groups cross-realm without requiring them to make level 1s on one of the high-pop servers and spam trade, I think we may really see more of a willingness for entire guilds to transfer off of these high-pop servers to avoid these queue times. And we'll probably see less transfer to those realms in the first place.
You actually bring up a good point too, because one thing a lot of these realms have in common is that they're a central hub for one thing or the other. So Tichondria is a hub for Horde PvP, and being so, I think a lot of the traffic you're seeing with these login queue times is people making level 1s, right, to go and look in Tichondria's chat for arena partners or RBG teams or something of the like. So a lot of people are logging on to this central PvP hub to find partners. The same goes for Darkspear. It's kind of an alliance, the alliance version of Tyche, sort of. The alliance PvP hub. So the same thing going on there. You got Illidan, which is the Horde PvE. Well, it's a PvP server, but more well known for its PvE. Stormage, alliance PvE. That's what all these realms have in common. And that's why you're seeing such high queue times, because people are logging onto them with level 1s looking for partners, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why I think if they implement the group finder right, and it's not necessarily to do that kind of thing anymore, and it's not necessarily necessary to be on one of these high pop realms in order to play the game effectively, I think we'll see a big spread out of the player base away from these high population realms, and the issue will diminish significantly. But in the short term, I don't think anything is really going to change until Warlords of Draenor.
Davis, going down to you. Obviously, you don't play on US servers; you're on EU. But I know you guys kind of see the same problems, right? On some of the high pop PvP servers.
Yeah, even not so much the PvP servers. Like a couple of servers that I've put characters on, and my main server, have all had big queue times, and they're not PvP servers and stuff like that. So I don't know. Maybe there are a lot of people that are thinking about coming back to the game. Because my realm's quite an old realm, and so I thought that might be it. It might be people that have played ages in the past.
Which one are you talking about? Argent Dawn?
Yeah.
Well, that's what I don't want to sound stupid. I think isn't that one of the most popular servers on EU? Argent Dawn, is that what I'm thinking of, or no? No, what's the?
Argent Dawn's like the Moonguard of EU.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
JD's one of those guys.
Well put.
I'm not one of those.
I'm not one of those guys.
Oh.
I don't know. You kind of look like it with that monkey hoodie you're wearing right there, or onesie, I should say. I'm just busting him, Davis. Anyways, guys, I think that's it. That's pretty much all we have for the show today. I think this was a good one. I think we had a lot of great talking points, and Holinka and Lore, if you guys are listening, give us some more stuff to talk about next week. We would love it.
We completely missed earlier in the day. I don't know how many of you guys caught this, but Lore and Holinka were hanging out in an Azael stream, and apparently Lore actually let some information go that was not to be released yet, and I missed it. Everyone missed it.
Maybe someone will post it on a forum somewhere, hopefully.
Find it.
We should just extend an invite right now, Olenka and Lore, if you want to come into our stream and happen to let some things slip. I would not complain personally.
I don't think any of us are going to be complaining.
We'll keep tight-lipped.
Anyone. Man, I'll tell you what, I'm really fumbling over words today. Aridin, going to you. Any last-minute shout-outs for the day? Nice.
As always, shout out to the chat. You guys make this tons of fun to do, and I love seeing everything everybody's saying. Shout out to you guys for being here again once every week. It's pretty consistent, solid. I like it. Yeah. And that's pretty much it. And also, again, congrats to Team Zunigo's winning the Yaspresents Tournament.
Yeah, it was actually really exciting today, too. There was actually people on our Twitch channel like an hour before we started. Yeah. I like to see that. I'll tell you what. We're
Spread the word.
We're hanging out in there, too, in the chat. So if you guys want to come and talk to us, we'd love to chat around. Eldakar, going down to you. Any last-minute shout-outs for the night?
I want to give a shout out to the chat as well. Like always, you guys have been great, and it's wonderful to see you interacting and talking about the topics as we're talking about them. It's really, really cool just interacting with you guys every week.
Yeah.
A shout out to Laura and Holinka as well. Please keep giving us more news. We had such a dry spell there over the holidays.
Yeah.
We want more. We're hungry.
Yes.
And a shout out to my friend Kate for blowing up my phone while we were doing this podcast.
There you go. I thought that was actually like Holinka tweeting you, telling you not to talk about stuff, but I guess not. Dave, it's going to you. Any shout outs for the night?
Shout out to the chat, and shout out to my guild and all the people I'm doing arena with and things like that.
Excellent. Well, I will give a shout out too. I mean, I got to say the chat, this is actually one of the most active chats I think we've ever had in. Trust me, guys, it means a lot. This is super exciting when we can interact with, the community. This is exactly why we do this. This is exactly the reason why we do this. Please, everyone, just remember, go to pvp-live.com, bookmark that site, follow us all on Twitter, right down here, follow PvP Live on Twitter, and follow PvP Live on Twitch. Thank you so much. We'll be back next week with hopefully some more news. Holinka, Lore, thank you. Until
Bye,
next
guys.
time.